Autism is a neurological disorder that's characterized by social awkwardness and difficulty in communicating with others. Since autism is a spectrum disorder, no two autistic people will ever be precisely alike in terms of their particular symptoms. On the DSM-5, which is the 5th edition of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that is used by mental health professionals to diagnose and treat disorders, autism is divided into 3 levels of severity, with level 1 being mild autism, 2 being moderate, and 3 being severe. Level 1 autistics such as myself have difficulty with identifying and understanding social cues. I myself face challenges in understanding all but the most obvious facial expressions. I am not good at reading body language or understanding tones of voice. Since I have a literal mindset, I am not particularly good at understanding sarcasm. All of these problems make it challenging for me to interact with others because there is an underlying subtext in communication that is conveyed by facial expressions, body language, tones of voice, and sarcasm that can change the meaning and intent of what neurotypicals say. As a result of being socially awkward, we face challenges in developing and maintaining personal relationships. Although level 1 children on the autistic spectrum disorder may speak in complete sentences, they may have issues with understanding the give and take that is typically involved with a conversation. They may also face challenges with staying organized and transitioning between different tasks. Although there are level 1 autistics who may aspire to have busy social lives, I myself am a reclusive introvert when I am not at work. I keep to myself partially to avoid giving inadvertent offense, but also because I find myself more able to relax when I am completely alone. Level 2 autistics have more challenges with interpersonal communication than level 1s, and will be even less responsive to social cues. They tend to be cognitively inflexible. This means that they will have less ability to adapt to changing circumstances or new information. This also means that they will have issues with understanding different perspectives or opinions. Level 3 autistics face extreme challenges with their ability to communicate. Some will only speak a few words. Others will be completely nonverbal throughout their entire lives. People with extreme autism tend to be inflexible and will have difficulty with adjusting to changes in their routines or transitioning from one activity to another. Autism is more easily diagnosed with children than with adults. Children are easier to diagnose because they haven't yet learned to compensate for their social awkwardness. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that all children be screened for autism during their 18 and 24-month checkup. According to the CDC, autism is diagnosed in young children through structured tests and asking parents or caregiver questions about their behavior. The result of these evaluations will inform the clinician as to whether or not the child meets the criteria for a developmental diagnosis according to the DSM. A diagnosis is important for children because your child's school will then be required to provide an individualized education plan known as an IEP in order to facilitate meeting his or her educational needs. In addition to your child's general education, a special education teacher will teach your child how to develop interpersonal communication skills. In terms of diagnosing autism in adults, please be aware that there is no single test that one can take to diagnose autism. Although there are free online tests, none of these tests are legally recognized as a diagnosis that will allow one to qualify for disability payments or workplace accommodations. At best, they will indicate whether you might be autistic. To get this self-diagnosis confirmed, you will have to make an appointment with a clinical psychologist. Since autism is more easily diagnosed in children, it can be challenging to find a clinical psychologist who would be willing to work with an adult. In order to diagnose autism in adults, a clinician will need to interview the parents or caretakers of the person in question. They will also need to conduct an interview with the person in question and to administer a battery of social-emotional, logical, and intelligence tests. The total process will take about 4 hours and will cost in the area of $1,100 unless you have health insurance that will cover most of the cost. Autistic symptoms in adults can be divided into 3 broad areas: social communication behavior, restrictive or repetitive behavior, and specialized interests. Within the area of social communication, possible symptoms include having problems with reading social cues. This includes not always knowing when to speak, how long to speak, or when to stop and listen. Understanding other points of view can be challenging since many of us lack the ability to intuitively understand how another person might be feeling. This is not to say that we lack empathy. Our problem with social communication is that unless you tell us how you are feeling, we often won't know due to our issues with reading facial expressions and understanding body language and tones of voice.
Some of us speak in flat, expressionless voices that don't indicate how we feel.
Making eye contact is uncomfortable, though some of us can do this if we absolutely have to. Building or maintaining friendships can be hard given our issues with interpersonal communication. Since we have literal mindsets, understanding the use of figurative language can be challenging. For example, while standing in line to purchase groceries at a supermarket, I once observed a woman eyeing the snacks on display by the register. "I'd kill for a candy bar," said the woman to her friend. The cashier, who was likely autistic, was horrified. "Killing is wrong," he shouted before running to loudly tell the manager that a customer was planning to kill someone. In addition to having all of the aforementioned symptoms, I tend to use overly formal language. As a way of socially distancing myself from others, I will not address other adults by their familiar names even if we are on cordial terms. For example, a colleague named John Doe would be addressed as Mr. Doe or Dr. Doe if he had a doctorate. In terms of restrictive or repetitive behaviors, changes in routines or transitioning from one activity to another may be very stressful to people on the autistic spectrum. This is particularly true when unexpected things happen, such as inclement weather disrupting travel plans, or an unscheduled fire drill disrupts your work routine. Many of us have routines and schedules that we like to follow. The use of routines and schedules gives us a sense of security and control in a world that often seems chaotic and confusing. For example, during the work week, I will eat a cheeseburger with fries at Chili's prior to going grocery shopping for culinary supplies. At the start of each workday, I make breakfast in my culinary arts kitchen prior to printing out the recipes that I will be using that day. At home, I always feed the cats at 4:30 and will then eat dinner at 5 p.m. while watching the news. Last year, my building administrators were always good about telling me about upcoming emergency drills. This year they stopped doing this because they said that all of this information was in the principal's weekly bulletin. Since I am the only career and technical education teacher on campus, I used to be partnered with the art and music teachers to form an ad hoc department for departmental meetings. This year the school administration switched me over to math and science without any explanation as to why I was changing departments. This has required me to interact with colleagues whom I don't really know in parts of the school that I have not previously visited. All of these changes in procedure, combined with having a level 3 autistic student added to one of my classes, and other ongoing stressors, led to my decision to quit teaching after 32 years in the classroom. While these may seem like minor changes to the building administration, they have severely disrupted my sense of routine. Many of us on the autistic spectrum have deep interests in a few specific areas. I myself have always been interested in all things culinary and was able to leverage this interest into a career. Although I used to have an interest in Napoleonic-era French military and could speak in detail about French military logistics and quartermaster supply issues with particular attention given to how French troops were fed, within the past 20 years, I have evolved away from this area and have developed an interest in blogging and creating YouTube videos. I currently have 2 YouTube channels. One is called Cooking with Chef Dave in Laughlin, and the other that I just started this year is called Life with Autism. The Life with Autism channel was created in support of a WordPress blog by the same name. Other possible symptoms of autism could include having one or more acute senses. Some people do not like bright lights, loud noises, or high-pitched sounds. Others have sensitive skin and will only use certain fabrics like pre-washed cotton as opposed to wearing synthetic fabrics like polyester or rayon, which can feel coarse and itchy. In the Netflix television series, Extraordinary Attorney Woo, the autistic character of Woo Young-woo will only eat food like Korean seaweed rice rolls because this type of food clearly shows all of the ingredients that were used to make it. In real life, I have met people who won't eat unless all of the food is clearly separated. I have also known people who will only eat foods of a certain color or texture. Some autistic people are clumsy and are physically uncoordinated. Most of us need quiet downtime to rest and to emotionally recharge after a long stressful day. A lot of us also self-stim as a form of reducing stress. Self-stimming includes the use of repetitive behaviors such as flapping or wagging our hands, pacing, rocking back and forth, or violently shaking one's head. If you think you are autistic, you should get a clinical diagnosis to confirm that you are on the spectrum. In the United States, a self-diagnosis is not legally recognized as being valid because some autistic symptoms overlap with the symptoms of other disorders such as social anxiety, ADHD, avoidant personality disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, and depression. In order to apply for disability payments in the United States through Social Security, or to request a reasonable workplace accommodation, one must have a clinical diagnosis. Disability applications must also be accompanied by a letter from a doctor explaining why you are unable to work. I think receiving a clinical diagnosis is important because knowledge is power. After all, how can you compensate for any deficiencies that you may have unless you know what they are and why you are the way you are?
If you found this video interesting and would like to support this channel, please click on the like and subscribe buttons. If you have thoughts regarding other topics that I could address in a future video, please feel free to add your suggestions to the comments below.